There are 21 rare vintage everyday items that could be worth a fortune, and you might own one right now, sitting in a kitchen cupboard, a toy box, a chest of drawers, or the back of the garage, doing the humblest job imaginable while being worth more than everything around it. This is the strangest corner of the whole collecting world, because it is not about fine art or precious metal. It is about the ordinary things, the mixing bowl, the lunchbox, the toy, the drinking glass, the objects that were made to be used and thrown away, which is exactly why so few survived and why the survivors can be worth a small fortune. Tonight I am going to count them up, from the common versions that are worth nothing, all the way to a single childhood toy at number 1 that has sold for tens of thousands of dollars, and I will show you exactly what to check on every ordinary object in the house before you give it away.
Now let me be honest before we start, because the internet is full of nonsense about this. The overwhelming majority of your old household things are worth exactly what they look like, which is very little, and I will tell you plainly as we go what is what. Your everyday mug is a mug. But here is what 40 years around the sale rooms taught me. In this world of everyday things, value hides in the specific, the exact pattern, the exact color, the exact edition, the tiny detail that separates the common version everyone had from the rare version almost nobody kept. Two objects can look identical and be worth $100 apart, and the whole game is learning to see the difference. Knowledge is the only protection you have got. An everyday object does not announce its price. Two mixing bowls can sit on the same shelf, one worth $3 and the other worth $300, and the only difference is a pattern name that means nothing to most people and everything to a collector. And there is no shame in not knowing that, because the whole of this strange corner of the trade rests on details that were never meant to matter. Now, before we carry on, let me say one thing. The support my channel has had lately has been overwhelming, and I mean that. So here's what I've decided. I'm not putting ads on these videos. You've given me your time, and I won't have it interrupted. If you'd like to support my channel, there's one way. You can scan the code on screen now with your phone's camera to get my book. I've put everything I know into one book, the Household and Collectibles Price Guide, 2027 edition. Every common item you might own, how to value it, and what it actually sells for. It even tells you where and how to sell it, who buys it, what they'll pay, and which route to take for which object. To get it, and everything I know, it's over at my website, malcolmashby.com. That's MALCOLMASHBY.com. Right, let's carry on. Number 21. Ordinary drinking glasses and tumblers, and we begin with the humblest thing in the kitchen, the everyday glass. I have to be straight with you. The common tumbler is worth nothing. But here is the first check I want you to carry through this whole video, because certain mid-century glasses, the hand-decorated ones, the ones by named makers, the promotional glasses given away by petrol stations and fast food chains in complete sets, are collected, and a full set in perfect condition brings $20 to $100, and the rare ones more. Your test tonight, it is never the plain glass, it is the specific decorated or promotional one in a complete set. So look for a maker's mark on the base and the design that ties it to a film, a brand, or a promotion of its day. The promotional glasses given away by petrol stations and burger chains were made to be used and binned, so a complete box set that somehow survived intact is far scarcer than the millions that were thrown out, and the tie to a beloved film or brand is what gives a humble tumbler a following at all. Number 20. Old kitchen tins and packaging, the biscuit tins, the sweet tins, the branded packaging people kept to store buttons and screws in. Most are worth a few dollars, but the early, the unusual, and the ones for brands that no longer exist are collected, bringing $20 to $100, and the rare ones far more. Your test tonight, the older and the more obsolete the brand, the better. So a tin from a company that vanished decades ago in good, bright condition is worth far more than a recent one, and the humble tin full of odds and ends in the shed may be the collectible, not the odds and ends. Old packaging was almost never kept for its own sake, which is exactly why it is now scarce, so a bright, undamaged tin from a brand that vanished a lifetime ago is a small piece of everyday history, and the fact that it was pressed into service, holding buttons and screws, is often the only reason it survived at all. Number 19. Vintage lunchboxes. The metal lunchboxes decorated with television and film characters, carried to school and battered to death by children. Because they were so heavily used, good ones are scarce, and a clean vintage character lunchbox brings $50 to several $100, the rarest far more. Your test tonight: condition is everything, because these were designed to be abused, so a lunchbox with its paint bright and unscratched and its matching flask still present is far rarer than the dented survivors, and the character on the front, if it is a sought-after one, drives the rest. Think of how a lunchbox was treated, swung against walls, dropped on playgrounds, scraped along the ground, day after day for years, and you understand why a clean one is so rare, because almost every one was wrecked, and the survivor, with bright paint and its matching flask, is the needle in the haystack. Number 18. Pyrex and vintage kitchenware in rare patterns, the colored mixing bowls and casserole dishes that sat in every kitchen. Here is where the everyday truly hides a fortune, because while the common Pyrex patterns are worth a few dollars, the rare patterns and the promotional colors are chased hard, and a rare pattern bowl brings hundreds, while the rarest have sold for thousands. Your test tonight: it is entirely about the specific pattern and color, not the object, so photograph the pattern and look it up, because two mixing bowls that do the same job in the same kitchen can be a world apart in value, and the rare pattern is the whole prize. This is the purest example in the whole video of value hiding in a detail, because the bowl is the same bowl, the same size, the same use, and only the pattern printed on the outside separates the one worth a few dollars from the one collectors will cross the country for. Number 17. Old drinking and promotional bottles, the glass pop bottles, the milk bottles, the early branded bottles people dug up in gardens or found in sheds. Most are common, $1 or $2, but the early, the embossed, the local dairy and brewery bottles and the rare colors are collected, bringing $20 to $100, and the scarce ones more. Your test tonight: look for embossed lettering naming a specific local company, and unusual colors like a deep cobalt blue, because a bottle tied to a vanished local firm in a rare color is far more than the plain clear bottle beside it. Bottle collectors are a devoted lot, and they chase the local dairies and breweries that disappeared long ago, the embossed names of firms nobody remembers, so a bottle dug out of a garden or found at the back of a shed can carry a whole vanished local history in its glass. Number 16. Vintage advertising signs, the enamel and tin signs for old brands, the shop and garage advertising that hung on walls. Reproductions flood this market, so beware. But a genuine old enamel advertising sign for a well-loved brand brings $100 to several $100, and the best far more. Your test tonight: learn to tell a genuine aged enamel sign from a modern reproduction by the weight, the chips, and the real wear, because the market is full of fakes made to look old, and a genuine period sign for a famous brand is a serious collectible, while a reproduction is worth almost nothing. This is a market where the fakes have done real damage, because modern reproductions are made by the thousand to look convincingly aged, so the whole skill is in telling the genuine period sign with its real chips and its heavy true enamel from the artificially distressed copy, and the gap between them in value is enormous. Number 15. Old cameras and everyday photographic gear, the film cameras that sat in every household drawer. Most old cameras are worth very little because they were made in their millions, but certain models, the well-made classics, the collectible brands, and anything unusual bring $50 to several $100, and the rare ones far more. Your test tonight: it is the specific model and maker that matter, so look up the exact name and number on the camera, because most are worth pennies, but a few specific models are chased by collectors, and only the name tells you which you have. Cameras were made in staggering numbers, So the great majority are worth almost nothing, but a handful of specific models, prized for their engineering or their place in photographic history, are worth real money, and the two can look almost the same to anyone who does not know the exact names to look for. Number 14. Vintage tools and workshop items. The hand planes, the spirit levels, the workshop tools in the garage. Common tools are worth their use, but the fine old brand name tools, the early patented designs, and the beautifully made ones are collected, bringing tens into the hundreds. Your test tonight, look for the maker's name and any patent date stamped into the metal, because a plane or a tool by a revered maker in good condition is worth far more than a generic one. And the tool chest in the garage is exactly the sort of thing that gets sold for scrap without a second look. There is a whole world of collectors devoted to fine old tools, the beautifully made planes and levels and gauges of the great workshops, and because tools are seen as purely practical, a chest of them is often sold off by weight after a bereavement, with nobody realizing that one plane in the box was worth more than all the rest together. Number 13. Old fountain pens and writing instruments, the pens that sat forgotten in desk drawers. Most are modest, but fine pens by the great makers, especially with gold nibs or in rare finishes, bring $100 to several $100s, and the finest into the thousands. Your test tonight, look for the maker's name on the barrel and check whether the nib is marked gold, because a fine pen by a revered maker is a serious collectible, and the pen you have been using to jot the shopping list may be worth more than the desk it lives in. Fine pens were treasured possessions in their day, given as gifts to mark occasions, and the best makers used gold nibs and rare finishes that collectors still prize, so a pen that has spent decades forgotten in a drawer can turn out to be a genuinely valuable object, quite apart from the memories attached to it. Number 12. Vintage watches worn every day, the ordinary wristwatches in the bedside drawer. Most old watches are modest, but certain mechanical watches by the right makers, even simple everyday models, are collected, bringing hundreds to thousands depending on the name and the movement. Your test tonight, look at the name on the dial and open the back if you can to read the movement, because a plain-looking everyday watch by a respected maker can be worth many times a flashier quartz one, and the watch nobody wears is exactly the sort of sleeper this video is about. The watch world rewards the movement inside as much as the name on the dial, so a plain, unshowy watch by a respected maker, the sort that would never catch a casual eye, can be worth a great deal, while a big flashy watch of the same age may be worth almost nothing, and only knowing the maker and the movement tells them apart.
Now, a quick word. If you've got any old things at home, don't do anything with them yet, not till you know what they're worth. My full price guide, every common item you might own and what it sells for, is over at my website malcolmashby.com. That's MALCOLM Ashby.com, or scan the code on your screen.
Now back to it. Number 11. Rare vinyl records and picture sleeves, the singles and albums in the box under the stereo. And here we cross into real money for the right item. Most records are common and worth pennies, but first pressings, withdrawn covers, and rare singles bring hundreds, and the true rarities have sold for many thousands. Your test tonight, it is the specific pressing, the catalogue number, and the sleeve variation that matter, not the fame of the artist, so a withdrawn or first pressing sleeve, told apart by tiny details, can be worth 100 times an ordinary copy of the same record. Records are the perfect example of the specific mattering more than the famous, because the hit album that sold millions is worth pennies, while an early pressing with a cover that was quickly changed, or a single that was withdrawn almost at once, can be worth a fortune, and the two are told apart only by catalogue numbers and small print. Number 10. First edition books and dust jackets, the books on the shelf that look like any other. Most old books are worth very little, but a genuine first edition of the right title with its original dust jacket intact brings hundreds to many thousands. Your test tonight, The dust jacket and the edition are everything, so check the printing details on the copyright page and never ever throw away the paper jacket, because with modern first editions, the jacket can be worth more than the book, and a first edition of a beloved novel is exactly the sort of thing that hides on an ordinary shelf. The cruelty of book collecting is that the difference between a valuable first edition and a worthless later printing is often invisible on the spine, hidden in the small print of the copyright page, and that the fragile paper jacket, the very thing most people tear off and throw away, is frequently where most of the value lives. Number 9. Vintage jewelry and costume pieces in the drawer. The brooches and beads in the dressing table box. Most costume jewelry is modest, but the signed designer pieces, the Bakelite and the fine early costume jewelry are collected, bringing tens into the hundreds and the best more. Your test tonight: turn every piece over and look for a designer's name stamped on the back, because a signed piece by the right maker is worth many times an unsigned one that looks identical, and the name is often smaller than a grain of rice. Costume jewelry was never precious in its materials, so people treat it carelessly, but the collectors of signed designer pieces will pay handsomely for the right name, and that name is stamped so small on the back of a clasp or the reverse of a brooch that it is missed by almost everyone who has not learnt to look for it. Number 8. Old comics and magazines, the comics in the loft and the magazines in the attic. Most are worth little, but early issues, first appearances, and comics in high-graded condition bring hundreds to many thousands. Your test tonight: it is the specific issue number and the condition that matter, so a first appearance or a landmark issue, kept flat and clean, is worth a fortune, while the same title a few issues later is worth pennies, and the difference is entirely in the number on the cover and the state of the pages. Comics were printed on cheap paper and meant to be read and thrown away, which is exactly why the early landmark issues, kept flat and clean, are so scarce and so valuable, and why condition is judged so ferociously, because a crease or a faded cover can take a fortune down to a modest sum in an instant.
Number 7. Sealed and boxed toys nobody played with, the toys that survived in their original packaging because a child never opened them. Here is the great multiplier of the toy world, because a played-with toy is worth a fraction of the same toy sealed in its box, and a boxed vintage toy in fine condition brings hundreds to thousands. Your test tonight: the box and the seal are worth more than the toy itself, so a toy still sealed in unopened, undamaged packaging is a completely different object from the loose one, and the packaging that everyone threw away is exactly what the collector is paying for. It is worth pausing on how strange this is, that the cardboard and plastic a toy came in, the very things designed to be ripped off and binned within seconds of a child getting hold of it, can end up worth many times the toy itself, purely because almost nobody kept them and the collector demands them.
Number 6. Rare board games and playing pieces, the games in the cupboard with the worn corners. Most are common, but early editions, complete with every piece, and the rare or withdrawn games are collected, bringing tens into the hundreds, and the rarest far more. Your test tonight: completeness is everything, so a vintage game with every single piece, card and token present in a clean box is worth far more than one with a piece missing, and the collectors who want these want them whole. Games were played until the box fell apart and the pieces scattered under the sofa, so a complete vintage game with every card and counter and token still present in a clean box is genuinely uncommon, and a single missing piece can be the difference between a valuable set and an unsellable one. Number 5. Early electronic gadgets and computers, the first home computers, games consoles and gadgets in their boxes. Most are modest, but the earliest, the boxed, and the working examples of landmark machines are chased hard, bringing hundreds to thousands. Your test tonight: boxed and working and early, is the combination, so a landmark early computer or console, complete in its box with its manuals and leads, is a serious collectible, and the machine you nearly took to the recycling center may be the prize of the loft. Early computers and consoles were superseded so quickly that most were thrown out the moment the next model arrived, boxes and all, so a landmark early machine that survives boxed and working with its manuals and leads is a genuine rarity, and the whole history of home computing is now chased by a passionate and well-funded set of collectors. Number 4. Rare action figures on the card, the figures still sealed on their original backing card, and this is where the toy world reaches serious money. A loose figure is worth a little, but the same figure sealed on an unpunched card, graded and preserved, brings hundreds to thousands, and the rarest far more. Your test tonight, the card and the seal are the whole value, so an action figure still attached to its original, unopened, undamaged card is a completely different proposition from the loose figure at the bottom of the toy box, and the rarer the character and the better the grade, the higher it climbs. Number 3. Prototype and pre-production items, the versions that were never sold, the samples, the first shots, the test pieces that escaped the factory. Because they were never meant to leave the factory, these are extraordinarily rare, and a genuine prototype toy or product can bring many thousands to tens of thousands. Your test tonight, an item that differs from the version that was actually sold, an odd color, a missing marking, a slightly different form, may be a rare pre-production piece, so anything that does not quite match the shop version is worth an expert eye, because the versions that were never sold are the ones collectors chase hardest. A prototype or pre-production piece is by its nature almost unique, made in a handful of examples inside a factory and never intended to reach the public, so the ones that slipped out are the rarest objects in the whole field, and an item that simply does not match the version that was sold in shops is always worth showing to someone who truly knows. Number 2. The graded near-mint grails, the specific everyday objects that survive in flawless, professionally graded condition, sitting just below the record prices. At this level, the object is common, but the perfect surviving example is not, and flawless graded examples of iconic toys and collectibles bring tens of thousands. Your test tonight is really the discipline of this whole video at its sharpest, that the difference between an object worth $10 and the same object worth 10,000 is condition and completeness, invisible until you know to look, which is exactly why you never bin the boxed, the sealed, and the pristine until someone who knows has looked. Number 1. And now the payoff, and it is the perfect story for this video, because it is a child's toy, the most disposable thing in any house. The vintage Star Wars figures made in the late 1970s and early 80s were bought for a few pounds, torn out of their packaging, and played with in the garden until they were scratched and broken, and most families threw the cards and boxes straight in the bin. But a very few survived sealed on their original card, unpunched and undamaged, and those have become some of the most valuable toys in the world. A single vintage figure, sealed on the right early card in top-graded condition, can bring tens of thousands of dollars, and the rarest, like a certain double-telescoping lightsaber Luke, have sold for $25,000 and beyond. A toy that cost a couple of pounds, that millions of children destroyed, worth more than a car because a handful survived untouched. And here is the reframe I have been walking you toward for 21 rungs. Every valuable object in this video is valuable for the same reason that it was ordinary, made to be used and thrown away, so almost nobody kept it in perfect condition, and the few that survived pristine became rare precisely because everyone else treated theirs as worthless. The value was created by the throwing away. The common object and the fortune are the same object, separated only by condition, completeness, and the specific version. Your test tonight, and it has run under every item on this list, is to stop asking whether an object looks valuable, because ordinary is exactly the disguise these treasures wear, and start asking 3 questions instead. Is it the specific rare version, the exact pattern, color, edition, or issue? Is it complete and in the best possible condition, ideally sealed or boxed? And is it something almost everyone else threw away? Those 3 questions are the whole of this trade, and now they are yours. So that is the ladder, from a plain drinking glass worth nothing to a childhood toy worth tens of thousands, and the thread that connects every rung is that the everyday object is valuable precisely because it was disposable, and that the specific version in perfect condition is worth 100 times the common one that looks just like it. Never assume an old household thing is worthless because it is ordinary, because ordinary is where these fortunes hide. Never throw away a box, a card, a jacket, or a piece because the packaging and the completeness are so often the whole value. And always look up the specific pattern, model, or issue before you let anything go, because in this video, the difference between pennies and thousands was never the object, it was the detail. Now, if anything today looked familiar, have a proper look before you sell a single thing. Everything's in my price guide over at malcolmashby.com, or scan the code on your screen. I'll leave it up for you.